Okay, welcome back. Let's go ahead. Today we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to continue on my little demo here of painting my mech. I want to remind you of a couple things that we were doing before. This was just my single pass. Remember, I had a silhouette study. I spent about 30 minutes on this. We talked about having light coming from the left side, coming down from this angle, hitting the left. Therefore, this would be a lighter plane. That's going to be a darker plane. So this is an intro class to digital paint. But you should be able to remember your days from basic drawing and rendering how this is going to work. So lighter, darker, lighter, a little bit darker. This could fade back a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That can be a little bit more an atmospheric perspective because it's further back behind. But what I want to do now is I just have some base tone on there that's turning the shape, and I want to introduce you to sort of two options that you can use. One of them has to deal with where you start painting a texture separately, and you bring the texture in and you can put it down on there. Okay, I did a couple of textures for you before. We did a whole demo where I was doing wood and some other various textures. Another option that I want to introduce you to is being able to start kit bashing, where you take parts of photos, paint on top of those parts of photos, and you bring them in and you start to merge them onto your rough paint here, and then it allows you to see some different areas that you never saw before. So first thing I'm going to do here is let me turn off my layer here, and actually let's see what I have here. Make sure I'm all committed here. Okay, I'm going to commit these two. So there, I just have one layer right now only. I'm going to turn that off. Let's come over here. I'm just going to make some type of base brown metal in here right now. So what I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to use multiple layers to do this. Let's come over here. Let's start with just a base sort of brown color right in here. And I have no idea where I'm going with this. I haven't pre-planned any of this. I'll create a new layer here. Just going to fill it. All right, now that I have that done, I'm going to put another layer up on top here. I'll just leave those alone for right now. I'm going to put a gradient on this one. I like gradients. They're really great to use. Metal has a ton of natural gradations that take place. Okay. I'm going to come over here underneath the bucket tool. I have the gradient tool, so I could come over here now. All right. Have that new layer, and I could stroke a light gradient going across like so. Let's go in that direction, something like that. Okay, that can give me a nice sort of metal look, especially if I think about the direction my light's coming in. If my light's coming from left to right, and I come over and I do something in that direction, it's going to mimic light wrapping around a shape. Okay, but we can also create a gradient right now, and then we could transform it and get it to mimic the light that's coming. So I'm going to leave that right now. I'm going to go ahead, though. I'm going to change this layer so it blends in there. Let's see what happens if I put soft light or perhaps hard light in there. Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to come in. I'm going to put one more layer here in the middle. I'm going to come in with a sort of a textured brush. I like this one here quite a bit. Let me see if I can come in with this guy. And then I'm going to switch to like a darker brown. Something more like this. I'm going to come put some big speckles in there on a separate layer. All right. And I'm not doing any adjustments right now. I'm at 100%. So I'm going to come over here and click like 50. See what happens if I just, come in and put a little bit of a base like that. Maybe I'll go down to 10. Put just sort of a light build-up of what could be something sort of rusty looking like so. And that's pretty cool. I'm sort of liking what I have right there, and I could paint on top of that too. Remember, if I wanted to, I could duplicate that layer. If I really want to make it pop out. Okay, remember this, where I take that, I go to levels, and then I suck out all the black and make it pure white. Oops, other way. There we go. And then if I move that layer over a little bit, hold on a minute, deselect, let me just hit V, and if I move it over, I have that dark shadow underneath, and then that dark shadow starts to kick in there, and see it creates that underlying that really allows that sort of film to pop up. And then I can adjust my layers. If I want to drop that white down a little bit and bring it down, something like that. See, I can create a different effect there. I can also adjust the black on there as well that's underneath it, and I can create something that's really light that might look like it's some type of dust or dirt or something like that. Okay, so let's just say I like that right there. Let's go ahead. I'm going to commit to that right now. So I'm going to take all these. That just took me a matter of minutes, right, to create that. So I have this as a separate texture now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, just because I like to copy and paste, I'm going to select this, copy it, turn that off. Let's turn my guy back on here. I'm going to hit paste. And now I could take this guy and I could come over here and I could use different tools to start to blend this into part of my model. Okay, so a couple of the tools that I could use is if I hit transform, it's automatically going to go around my texture. And remember, right now I'm just on a base transformation, but if I right click, okay, or remember you can hit alt. I like to right click in the box because I just find it faster. And if I come down here to distort, I can grab part of this texture, see, and I can get it to fit a particular perspective. And the reason why I selected it and pasted it right now is that I have the original back here that I can turn on later on. Okay, so now that I select this, let's say I want to get it to bend, I can come down here, go to warp. So now I can get part of this, see, and I can start to bend some of the ends in here. I can get this texture literally to map over the whole entire head shape right there. I can get it to flow over the body. Let me get that in there. Let's say about like that. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's just hit enter right now. So now it's bending, it's wrapping over. So what I can do, I could start to erase that texture a little bit and I can get it to blend in. I could come down and put this onto a different setting. I could try overlay and see what it does. So what's cool about doing this overlay allows me to now pick up the value underneath. This is why values are so important. If my value works underneath, now the color up above it will start to pop out a little bit. So that's one little approach that I can do. And look, it even picks up the little highlights underneath there, right? That's overlay. Let's say I go to soft light. Soft light is a great way to get something that's like a really strong texture to make it blend in very lightly. There's also hard light that comes after this that allows me to apply as well. Okay, see, hard light really picks up some of those edges and sort of blends in. So now what I can do is I can come over here. Gosh, I even like how that's coming in there, but I like this a lot. I'm going to come in here with my eraser right now. Okay, I'm on that layer. Now, do I want to duplicate that layer and maybe save it for something else? I could. That arch, that angle in there could mimic part of the leg, right? So if I duplicate that layer right now, let's just say I'm going to bring this down. I might use that down about right here. See that scratchiness right there? If I transform that, that could fit right along that little panel right there. Okay. It might even fit over, let me transform that a little bit, enlarge it. It even fits a little bit over this piece here. I sort of like that. Okay, I like using this as a stepping stone to guide me into painting. Then at the last phase, I can really start thinking about light, reflective light, what time of day it might be, and applying all that. But this is what I call a stepping stone to guide me through my process. So I'm going to turn that one off. Let's go to the top one right now. I'm going to click my eraser. I'm going to jump in here. I have this eraser that I really like because if I do it at 100%, you'll see if I zoom in there, it has sort of this rough feel to it. So if I'm at like 20, it just lightly acts as sort of like a blending tool where I can sort of lightly come in and erase and blend something into something else. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm working here is sort of come over here and erase my overspray that I don't want. Okay, I'm going to use my hotkeys here, go up, I'm going to hit like 70% so I can take off a little bit more. I'm going to sort of come over the top of this right here. Okay. Now the only thing that I don't like about working with the option of overlay, soft light, and all that good stuff is that I can't compress it and merge it all into one layer. Because watch what happens right now. Let's say, let me finish erasing this real quick. Let's say I wanted to merge all this into one layer. It affects the way that the layer works, so I end up having to have a separate folder for this stuff. And sometimes when I'm working, I really like to sort of commit to one layer and just go off of that. So there's a couple options that I could do to sort of get sort of the same look and feel. Let me erase some of what's here. I'm going to go down to about 50% now and erase a little bit what's in here and get some of this texture to start to blend into the top. There we go. Sometimes even drop down to like 10 or 20 and just lightly go along the corner just to drop down the intensity of that light because it's wrapping around a corner, and I might get that light to blend in a little bit differently. You know, light's hitting here, might have a little value. Just get some of this to blend in like so. Get rid of some of those real distinct hard edges. There we go, like that. Okay. Now watch what happens if I try to merge that. Actually, it did it pretty good. Sometimes, you know, sometimes when I merge something, if I have too many specifics, you know what it is I merged it down to a solid layer, it become one layer. It's when I have numerous layers. If I have like a layer of soft light, hard light, and then another layer on top, and I merge those together, what it will do is they take them back to the standard normal setting, and it doesn't merge together. So here it merges fine when it goes into there, but look, imagine if I had this. Imagine if I duplicate that layer, and if I had that as, let's say I had an effect in here, vivid light on it, and I liked this type of feel right here. Say I had something like that. Once I merge this, hold on a second. I didn't duplicate it. Give me a minute. I made a little mistake there because I'm too busy talking. I'm not focusing on what I'm doing. Let me back up for just a second. Now, okay, sorry about that. I was too busy talking, not focusing there. So let's say that I have this layer right here is on soft light or hard light. The one up above it's on vivid. What happens if I merge these two together? Do you see that? It completely changes. That's what I was talking about, because it brings it back to a normal setting. So whenever I'm working, if you have some texture or surface that you really like, what your best interest is just to create a separate folder and drop all those in there, because you can't merge them together, because one layer has a different setting, another layer is doing something different. Now if I merge it all together down below into the core tonal study, that can work, which we just saw there. So if I come back to here and I take the hard light version, which is the one I liked right here, and if I merge that in here together, it stays. Now it's part of the painting, right? And then if I come back up here, turn on the hard light, I can still have that effect, but if I move it downward, it would be okay. Does that make sense? If I start merging multiple layers that are hard light, soft light, multiply, merge all those together, they go back to normal setting and then they never look right, okay? So there, I merged that in there. Now I have this sort of cool reflective piece that's taking place. Give me a second, let me back up. That's not the one I wanted. I wanted to put this guy in here. How did it get so? Let me go back to where I had it. Turn that off and on. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, actually I want to lighten that up just a little bit because I'm being picky right now before I merge it in. I want to get it right to about there. Okay, that's perfect. And now I'm going to merge that in. I'm going to commit to that. Okay, so now that I have that in, what I can do is if I go back and look, remember I have that other texture. Let me delete this one here. Okay, I have that other texture I put down here on the leg. So now I can come back into this guy and I can do that same thing. I could come down with the eraser at 100%. Hold on, I'm making mistakes after mistakes. I'm not focusing here. I'm on the wrong layer. I could erase off any of the extra overspray that I don't want on here. I find this really helpful. I use this technique quite a bit of painting my own textures on top of my own tone, especially when I'm doing environments. It allows me to see things that normally I might not have seen before. Let me just go around this guy super fast. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to come in here. Let me take this off too. I just want that on the top plate. Let's save that like right there. Now I'm going to come back in with my eraser at like 20% and start to just come around this corner, blend this in, take off that hard edge there. Start to get that guy to come in here a little bit. Get this to pop a little. Erase a little of that hard edge that's in there. Get rid of that. And what's cool is that I start to get a feel on how it makes my mech work. And then I like to come over and adjust the opacity a little bit and just feel like, that's sort of cool, just a light yellow tint like that. I dropped it down to about 70%. That looks cool. Now I could come over here and I could do that same thing to another part. So I'm sort of doing a dual step here. I'm finding a way to add a little bit more detail, and I'm also adding a little bit more color. Okay, so let's quickly say I want to put that over here on the other leg. I'm just going to select that layer right here. I'm going to duplicate it right. I'm going to bring it over this way. It's a little hard to see. You can hit Control T, tell it to flip horizontally. Then I can bring that in right there, put that on the other leg. I can hit OK, take my lasso, select this part here, delete it, and then I have an exact match sort of going over to the other side that I can change really quick. I'm going to commit to that, select all of those, merge those in. Okay, wait, you know what, hold on a minute. Before I merge that, I noticed over here it's a little bit brighter, so I'm going to erase a little bit of that overspray there. There we go. I'm trying to work fast for the demos. There's a couple ways you can do demos. One way is you can just work for 4 hours, record it, and then play it double speed. And I hate to do that because you have to go back and voice over it. So I just try to just do it as fast as I can at one point of view. So now I've committed to that. Okay, so there. I have something new. I'm pulling out some color. I'm getting some other cool variation. I got some cool texture popping out of there. That's sort of the first approach of you creating your own a texture and applying it. Okay. The second approach is this. We want to come over and let me grab, I have a folder right here. It's called Mech Photo Reference, and I put this up on the blog for you. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and drag this into Photoshop. I'm going to drag some of that, drag that helicopter, and let's just drag that guy in there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I have this reference here. Okay. I could come over, and sports cars are fantastic for this. Okay. I can take a little piece of this sports car right here. That first painting up on the top there, it's a little dark. That's my version of Mars being colonized, right? That's all made from Porsche bumpers. Okay, Porsche bumpers are fantastic for this. So what I can do is I could come in here and I could select just like a little piece of this car with a lasso. Like that. I can copy that, and then I could come back to my key paint here. Let me find it. Where is it? I got to click over here. There it is here, class demo right here. Okay, nope, that's a previous one. Hold on, let me minimize these folders so they're up. Let me bring these out real quick. There we go. That's the one we want. We don't need this guy here, and we don't need that one there. That's the one we want. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to come back and grab these. I like having these up in the bar. Unless you have a dual monitor set up at home, right? There, I copied and pasted off that car. Now I can come back over here, go back to the demo, and watch. I'm going to hit paste. And you see what I have there? I have that little shiny piece of metal. And there's a couple different things that I can do. One is that I can go on top of that and paint on top of it and try to mimic the blend of that paint. Okay. Two, and I'll do that in a minute, is I could run that through a filter and make it look totally different. Remember we did that when we were creating our own textures? Okay. And then the third thing I can do is I can start transforming and stretching that and dropping down the opacity and blending it into part of our paint here. So let me show you those three different options. Okay, let me zoom in here. It's on a separate layer. One is, let's say I wanted to try to blend that in and paint on top of it. Okay, watch, it's this easy. Take your brush. Okay, I have a particular brush that I like to use here. Call it like my fade-in brush, right? I get so many different, there's great artists that have brushes. There's all kinds of cool ways to get a ton of brushes. I can just swab the color that's here and just sort of lightly gradate across and sort of blend in and pretty much stretch this color that I see here. And this allows me to get a nice sort of painterly effect to what I'm doing as well. Okay, this is really over rendered for me right now, and I like to come over. I don't want to put in just the photo, because what's the problem of having just the photo? It's going to look a little bit too realistic. Okay, there's a point in time when you could use that, then there's a point where you need to get in there and just try to paint something yourself. And I could do this just by swabbing color. And then especially going in with like a 20 or 30 grade of that same color and then doing a light blend technique, trying to get this to come in very nicely, I can start getting a cool little effect of how this might look. Let's say I might have a little bit of white coming across here, a little bit more of a highlight blending down. There we go. See, I just did that pretty quickly. I'm just painting on top of it, right? Let me continue this back here as well. So while I'm doing this, I'm constantly hitting my keys, changing part of the variation. I'm at 50, I'm at 60, I'm back down. I might put a little bit of a shadow in somewhere. You just have fun with it. If you paint too dark, don't worry, you paint over it. Get it to blend in. I'm back down at 10% now, sort of trying to blend that little piece in, cover up my little mistake there, right? This goes along the edge here. I'm going to come back in at about 80%. Try to get this little edge to blend over to here. This might come up and bank over right here, so I want to get a nice crisp edge of white in along here. All right, there we go. Okay, make my brush a little bit smaller, put a little highlight in there. Look, I have a natural little gradient sort of coming in here. Looks pretty cool. And if you want to get really particular with it, I could even come in there and start selecting with my lasso, but I don't like to do that because it gives me such a hard edge. Okay, come in with my eraser here. Let's go to 100%. Trim this little piece off here. Okay. Now, something that's also fun to do is I could come in here and copy and paste and create little areas of detail. Let's say I want to make a segment that goes across right there, right? It's really easy to do. All I have is a dark line where it recedes in and then a highlight on top. So watch, I could copy and paste this. Let me show you how to make your own. I'm going to come over really quick. I'm going to swab black, right? Look, I'm just going to hold shift down right now and go across. From here, I'm going to touch, and then just sort of drag across like that. You see how I did that really quick? Okay, I'm going to hit transform. I'm going to get that at the angle that I like. Boom, it's right there. Okay, I'm going to move it over a teeny bit. Now I'm going to do the same thing with a highlight to save myself time. Anyone know what I'm going to do? I'm going to right click. I'm going to duplicate that dark value right there. Okay, but this time I'm going to go to levels. I'm going to suck out and turn it to white. I'm going to hit V and move it slightly above like that. Okay, it's a little bright there. So now I'm going to drop down the opacity of it. And you see what I just did? I just created another little section there, a little highlight, a little edge of metal dipping in. Okay, so now I have that. Let's commit. I'm going to merge that all together. Now I have this cool little piece right here. Okay, so I painted a little bit on there. So you can see where I've painted it here, but here it's still a little photoreal, right? Well, that's okay. Now I can decide where I want to use this in some of my mech. And the great thing is, what I like to do is I like to drop the opacity and lightly sort of blend it in a little bit like this. Okay, so it's not so photoreal, and then I could come back and paint on top of it. And it sort of fits there nicely, but what if I transform it, squash it in, maybe I get it really low in there and part of it comes back here and covers. I like to flip it around. Oh, I didn't think about that. What if it was like that? It looks like this comes over now and protects part of that front plate there. And then it could do the same thing on the other side. Now, that was sort of an accidental find there. But again, accidents are always fantastic because you come up with something you weren't thinking about. Okay. Now, if I go too low, that's not bad. I could paint over and get that to blend in. And like I said, I sort of like that approach because if I go to 100% opacity right now, it's going to look too much like a photo and it's way too bright. So technically, since we can do 5 different things in Photoshop on one image, I could go to levels, hue and saturation, and I could drop down my saturation and I could see if I could sort of desaturate it a little bit. I could adjust the lightness, so I could try to blend it in that way, which isn't bad. But I like pulling up part of the value underneath that I've already been working on, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop this down a little bit like that. Just get it in right about there. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and right click this. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that layer. Hit OK. I'm going to hit transform again. I'm going to tell it to flip horizontally. There it is. And now I can sort of bring that over to the other side. And if I squash it, You see how that would be the same piece of metal on the other side before it turned and wrapped around the corner. So now I could come over here, hit erase, and I can imagine that contour being something like that. Okay? There. And then, again, that's, right now, let's take a look at that. That's a little bit too bright for me too, so I might drop the opacity down on that a little bit, down to about there or so. And actually, let's leave it. I'm just curious, since there's no tone underneath, what happens if I just do that in levels a little bit? Just like that. There we go. Get it to fit. I'm not worried about the highlights now. I could come back later and put a little highlight on there, right? If it's really bugging you since light's coming left or right and you want to get a nice little highlight, come over, take your brush. Let me merge these together, by the way, so they become one piece now. See that? It's one piece on top here. And I'm going to take my brush, come over here with a little bit of white, knock my brush down to like 10%. I'm just going to come over here and just put, see if I can get a little bit of a highlight. Just lighten up part of that surface. Still getting like a light gray. There we go. Still a little light. Let me do it this way. There we go. There, get a little bit of highlight on that surface plane there. Maybe dull this down just a little bit more. Hit that in a little bit. Erase a little bit of that tip off of there. Okay, so there. Now I have, when I start to look at my mech now, see how it's starting to pop and come alive a little bit? I'm adding some little features on top of the tone that are really starting to get it to work and start it to make sense. Now, I don't have to commit to this. If I don't want that, I could dump it. If I want to come back here and then bring some of this up, I can paint over that still, right? So look, I could come over here. I mean, this is still a legitimate piece right here. Look, I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to say I want to bring this up. Say I want to bring it sort of like the feel of a snake, right? So what if I start to curve some of this up a little bit more like this? Maybe it comes up to a point. Like so. Here, to see how I'm getting it to wrap up a little bit. Maybe I need to get this to come up a little bit more over the top here. I sort of like that accidental black in there. See that? Looks like it recedes in there. Could be some type of detail or something. Maybe it's a marking on it. Actually, it could be a cut-through piece where you see. Maybe that's something that's used in the alien armament or something else. Okay. There, I pasted a little piece here. Now look back here. This is going to be a lot darker, right? Because this shape is going to wrap around as it comes from here. It's going to come back. So I can take some black now. I could come in here and sort of fill this up, make it a little bit darker in there. And then I might take a little bit of white and brighten this a little bit and get this to pop a little more. Get that to separate, hit that with a little bit more black. So it feels like that shape is wrapping around. Okay. There. So now I'm starting to get a lot more information that's taking place, okay? So let me go ahead. Let me commit to what I have right there, okay? There I have that. I'm going to leave that as a separate layer. I might change it. I always change things. I like to leave some of that detail. But that was me painting on top of the texture, right? Here, let me show you another approach on how, if you have the tone, by copying and pasting something on top, it allows you to see and allows your brain to make connections between shapes and arrangements. So see over here how it's sort of empty underneath there, right? Let me come back over here and let's go grab another piece. Actually, let's just use the same one we have. It's still in my memory. If I hit Command P, it's paste, right? Watch. I'm going to turn this way like this. That's what I love about transform. Now I have a totally different piece. You see how that just happened? Totally different piece. I could bring that up over here, squash it back. You start to see shapes you never would have imagined. What if that was up there? In fact, what if it was, I'm looking at that rifle. What if I flip it this way? bring that down, and that's like a little top piece for the rifle right there. You see that? And that looks sort of cool with that little dark layer underneath, and then there's that little top. And now it's sort of accentuating the armor plating that's there. So I might move that up a little bit. Let's see if I come back here and I erase a little off the top there. Curve some of that down a little bit. Blend some of that little corner in a little bit like that. And then let's drop the opacity a little bit. Let's say I like that look right there. And I'm like, cool. Now let's see if we duplicate that and put it underneath. I'm going to take this one. It's underneath. It's going to be a little bit darker. Make it a little bit smaller. And if I get that in about, let's say, right there, and then make it lighten up the opacity so I can see it, but it's underneath. It's going to be a little darker. There we go. That's sort of cool. Now I have this other feel for that top piece there. Okay? Merge it together, and then I can drop the opacity a little bit more, get it to blend in a little. Okay. So see, that's another way where I'm sort of getting something to blend in. As a little car fender, it's getting that area to pop. It's starting to work. Now, let me show you what I was talking about a second ago. What happens if I take like part of this helicopter or a gear, and I want to add part of a gear in there? See this cannon right here? If I zoom into it, look at part of that cannon structure that's in there. Watch, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to select around this right now. It feels, even though I know it's a cannon, I know it's a weapon, it's also very hydraulic in its sensibilities. Oops. Let me go back to the straight lasso real quick. I want to get that little edge in there. Boom. There we go. Holding down shift real quick. There we go. I'm going to copy that now. Let's come back over to our mech. All right. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hit paste. There. Now that's way too photoreal, right? But what happens if I run it through a filter, transform it, or find a way to blend it in there? Do you see how that could come down? Look at that. Look at that, how that could fit under that leg right there. Okay. Actually, I like the light being sort of hit right there. That can look like great reflective light. If I turn it back this way, I hit transform and I flip it upside down, and then I bring that back and get it right under the part of that leg there. You see how that starts to fit in there very nicely? There's just a couple edges that are highlighted and it really starts to feel somewhat realistic. Little highlights there that are wrapping part of the edge. Now, part of me is second guessing that, and I want to go back to where it was like that. I'm just thinking, what if I just get it to fit in like that? That way it's matching the light, the highlights in the right place. Okay. Now, look at this on the side here. If that's too realistic, I don't want to make it look like a photo, right? What if I run it through a filter? What if I come over here and go to blur? Okay. Not blur. Let's go to filter gallery, and let's try... there's a couple cool filters in here that are fun to use sometimes. Under artistic, paint daubs can work really nice sometimes. Plastic wrap has different effects. Dry brush can be pretty cool, where I'm just lightly, I can adjust it. So I could go back to the original. Give me a second here. And I'm just lightly modifying some of the detail. If I hit OK right there, see how it changed that? Now it doesn't look so much like a photo. But if I bring that down, okay, and if I transform that a little bit, actually I don't like that. I'm going to Command Z that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm just going to leave it right like there. What I'm going to do is drop the opacity down, just like that. It blended in perfectly right there. It's not too much, it's not too little. And what I might do is put a light blur on it. Now there's a couple ways that I can blur. Okay, one is if I come over here, I have, hold on, so I have the dodge and the burn tool, which allow me to add light or subtract highlights from it. I could do that to get it to pop out. So right now, if you look, if I come over here, I'm on the dodge tool, and then I'll show you the blur in a minute. I should show this tool here. If I come over and I pull like that, see it's pulling out highlights, okay? But if I Command Z and go back, and then if I click on this and go down to burn, burn's going to push down that shape. And that could be really effective for me because it allows me to push predetermined highlights on a photo downward and then allows me to paint on top of them as well. Okay. Also, under here, give me a second. Let's grab the mouse over here. Oops. If I come over here, I have the blur tool, the smudge tool, the sharpen tool. Okay. You have to be careful on these tools, especially the smudge tool. If I come over here and I want to smudge this, I have smudged a painting before and it just locks up and it hasn't been saved and I lose all the work that I did. Okay, so what I like to do is I always save. Now I've received some different, there's all kinds of different tool presets you can get from people. There's some really nice smudge ones that work very nice. Let me save this really quick. Okay, there, now I could come in here and I'm on smudge right now. So if I come over here, let's see what strength. I'm on the strength ratio. Let's go to 100%. See what happens. Let me zoom into this so you can see it a little better. You don't get too pixelated there. There we go. And so what I'm doing right now, what is that on? That's on sharpen. And it actually sharpened those edges quite a bit. So I'm going to Command Z and go back. And what if I come over here and I do a little bit of smudge? What if I grab this? See, it's going to smudge that edge around. See what that did right there? Sort of, it put a light. Smudge and blur can be very similar. There, I'm sort of going along that. Smudge is actually smearing part of that paint into the paint that's underneath. You see how that's, see it's stretching? It's smudging that whole highlight across right there. It's a great way for it to blend in. Can also come over here to blur too. Blur is going to allow me to go over something. See, and just puts a light blur where it keeps my eye from focusing on it all the time. So let's just say that's cool. I can zoom back out. That's not bad. I don't have too much detail, you know, but I have some change happening in there where it's indicating there's some highlights and surface change, and it's making that surface wrap a little bit, okay? So let's not stop there. Let's take that. Let me right-click that guy. Let me duplicate it, okay? Watch. I'm going to see if I can transform that a little bit. Let's put him at full strength. I'm going to see where I might be able to use that somewhere else. Wondering back here on this back leg if I scale it down a little bit more, maybe get it to fit right about in there. Maybe it's a different type of hydraulic on that back leg. So if I come in and I erase some of this, go to like 100%, thin that down a little. Okay, now I have a little bit of a, I'm going to drop the opacity down a teeny bit. All right, and now you start to get a little detail that's on that back leg. Ever so slightly. Can you see it? It's not tremendous, but it's just like a little, like there's a little hydraulic and a little hose right there and a highlight. That's great. That's all I need. Okay. What I like about that a lot is that now I can do this. Now I can come back over. Let me commit with everything on here just to do it right. Except for that one. I'm going to save that one. There we go. So I'm down to 3 layers right now. Let me erase what's here. I have some leftovers. I hate little googly globs like that. So now what's cool about that is, see I have that little highlight and stuff there? That enables me to come back in and imagine, you know, what the rest of this is going to look like. So I can come back to this layer and I could say, hey, what if I take that little highlight right here? What if I take this and this carries up a little bit right in here? What if it goes across this way? And then what if there's like another little head to something here? What if there's a little shadow underneath that? What if this highlight picks up a little bit more in here? Maybe this leg's already gone through battle and it's been fixed a couple times, right? From different pieces. So I might have a little highlight on that little section right there. So I'm getting that to pop out now. That shape's coming through. Okay. Come over here a little bit. Maybe decide to pull that leg out a little bit more. So it just gives me an idea on how to start painting. Now I'm starting to develop this a little bit back here. I'm going to come back on here. I want to tighten up some of this gray smudge that I painted around here before. I'm going to erase some of this right here. There we go, so I can get some more detail that might be in there. Okay. There we go. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay. So there I am. That's where I am, just with some real basic textures going on there. I'm looking at this, and I really want to get in here and paint a little bit more. So maybe I'll do that, and then I'll sort of wrap this demo up, because we're already at about 40 minutes, and I wanted to try to get something to render out. But you can see what I've done with painting my own texture, putting it on there, and or grabbing something from online and using it as well. I wanted to try another part of the helicopter here. It's really, when you take something like this, I mean, that's a cool looking shape right there, isn't it? It's a lot in there. I'm just going to copy that. Let me see where I can get that to blend in somehow. So if I just take that right there and I come over here, maybe I want some little mechanical gizmo in here. Watch, I paste that in there. And let me see what happens if I do this. What if I squash it a little bit? Get that right in about, actually, let's do this. Yeah, there we go. See how that feels like it could be some type of a little engine compartment or a little, there, that's perfect like that. I like that a lot. Now I'm going to come in here, I'm going to erase some of it, get this to blend in, take my eraser down to about 20%, go along the edges first because they're way too hard edges, right? Erase some of this off. That's cool. Always take the hard edges off. See how that fits in there? Now it's a little over detailed, so I want to find a way to simplify it a little bit, so I might erase some more of it. And then I can also paint on top of it, but just remember, if you adjust the opacity of the layer, it's going to be harder to see the paint, right? So I'm still at 100%. What if I come over here and I darken some of this underneath here? Keep that a little bit dark. I like that white plate sticking out. Let me drop down to like a 40 grade and go over some of this. That light's a little dark, so I'm just going to paint on top of it and knock some of that down right in there. Now this connects to this little piece I had here before, which I think is pretty cool. So what if I just come over here, darken that down, push that value down there, and then that's going to allow this top plate to sort of pop forward a little bit. You see that? Right in there, and if I get that to come forward a little, that actually this could come down and curve into that. Let's do that. Why not? There, see how I found that sort of happy accident right there? I mean, that wasn't, I didn't mean to discover that, but I did. Maybe that's a little side air vent that sort of pops out of there. There we go. So I got that cool little vent there. And then I'm going to blend, let's get some of this metal. Maybe that metal comes underneath and hooks up there a little bit. Maybe there's like a little cylinder here. Put a little highlight or two on that, bring some of that down here. There. And now it's still a little too photoreal in here, so what I'm going to do is just take some darker value and block this out a little bit. Try to get a larger shape. There's too much detail in there that's pulling away from some of the other elements that I was working on. And sometimes I just like taking like a value like this right here, going at like 30% and just sort of dragging across it. And it'll just get certain areas to pop, and then it starts to work a little bit better. So that's pretty cool. I like that little bit of detail that's coming through there. And let's say now I want to come in here, and I like to save detail for the end, but I'm imagining if this comes up here and maybe it wraps around. Goes this way and sort of wraps through here. So if I can get a little bit of a shadow in there. Oops. I'm going to duplicate that and put it down. Again, I'm still in sort of a rough phase. You know, I haven't gone on this and rendered light or put it in an environment or anything else. Let's copy that, paste that. Look, I'm just going to bring that down right there. See how easy I did that? It saves me a lot of time to do that very quickly. Just grabbed it, bring it down. Let me turn it a little bit more. Now, the elliptical part of the ellipse might be changing a little bit because it's dropping lower under that horizon line. So I might just come down here and go to warp and then just grab like the middle of it right here. See if I can just pull it down just ever so teeny bit like that. And then just hit OK. And I might just go to levels real quick, lighten it up a little bit more. There we go. See how that popped it out just a teeny bit more? So now I have this, it looks like this is wrapping around. Let's see if I can't steal some of this now. Okay, let me commit, because I'm starting to get too many layers, right? That's there. We're committed. See where we are. We're committed except for that top little piece. So let me grab this right now that I have in here. Now, if that's on the side, we might just see a little bit of it here, but see, we'd have to wrap around, and we're just going to see a teeny bit there. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, paste it. What I'm going to do is take that layer, drop it underneath the tone. See that? And look, it's the same. I'm going to transform it, flip it horizontally. And maybe I just see that little tip, a little bit of that tip. I'm going to squash it up. Okay, I'm going to pull it back a little bit more. Now, this is a great use of because we're getting to that other side, right? You understand what I'm talking about? Let me draw on top of that real quick so I don't confuse anybody about what I'm doing right now. Oops. I'm going to get red. So check this out. Let me draw on this, right? What do we know we have right here? This is a 100%. Okay, why is it not drawing? Hold on a minute. I did something. Deselect. Brush. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Give me a second. It's on the wrong layer. There we go. So now this is above. So look, what I have right here is a cylinder in there, right? That cylinder is going to drop down like this in perspective. So imagine my cylinder. We need to get about the right size and get it drawn correctly. Let's say that's my cylinder in there. This is on the side of the cylinder. So if I come up, I have to go over, drop down to the other side of the cylinder, draw through my shape in here, because then this goes out and forward. So from here, it's going to go out and forward. You see that? How that makes sense? That's our drawing through the shape. We have to get that to make sense. We just can't duplicate a fin or another side and put it on there. It has to make sense in perspective. So once I get that other corner there, okay, let me go back to that. I probably forgot what layer that's on. Let me drop down here a little bit. Here we are. That's right there. That's might even be a little bit crisper. So I'm going to go ahead and select this layer right now. I'm going to hit transform. I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit like that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, since it's on the other side, it might be a little bit lighter because the light's hitting it right there. So I might come over here. Let's go to light. I'm going to add a little bit more light into it, make it a little bit lighter on that back side, just like that. Okay. And then I might just blur it a little bit more. So I can go down to filter. I can go to blur. I even have a Gaussian blur option. Blur, if I just tell it to blur now, it'll do it automatically. Okay. But if I come over here and I go to blur and drop down a Gaussian blur, it's going to show me a control ratio, and then I can adjust it here. And I could say, you know what, I just want to put a light blur on it like that. Just get it to fade off. I know it's there. My mind sees it, but it's on the other side. That's one option. Or what I can also do is this. And this is probably what I would do now is, let me come back here. I'm actually going to darken it a little bit more. I went a little too. Get it right about there. I'm just being a little picky, a little bit darker. Then what I can do is I can come back over here and under this blur and smudge to get that, if I want to get that sort of rough feel as if I was painting it really fast, I could come over here. See, I can smudge some of that edge a little bit. See that? And then it's not so crisp. It's not so defining. And then by doing that in there, getting that just to smudge ever so lightly, like so. Then I could come over here and smudge I can't talk. Move this down to blur, and then when I get blur in here, now I could come in here and blur a little bit of that detail. See that? And that just blurs it for me like that. That's it. I don't need that much more. I'm going to come back to eraser. That comes to a point. So I might come in here and just lightly erase some of this and bring it down to a little bit more of a point. There we go. Just like that. And then leave it alone. Okay. That's it. So there. Now look at what I've done in you know, a couple minutes of what are we, 40 minutes now? We've added on some cool detail. We're getting some more areas to pop. I have this like front fairing shield. Now I have to determine if this is going to wrap around or go. This is actually going to protrude out a little bit more here, so I might need to come in and work on that a little bit right now. So let me let me delete that layer real quick, and let's go ahead and I'm just going to commit to all of this, so it's all in one layer right now. Okay, so I'm just working from one layer. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this out and down a little bit, just to about here. If I grab this value, I want to bring it down. See, this looks like it pops out and then sort of wraps around. So I want to see if I can get this to curve a little bit more, a little bit out to about, let's say about here. And then maybe it goes back like that. Okay? So let me just work on that little piece there. Oops, my computer's starting to freeze up because of the recording. Just a little bit. Okay, just like that. There, and just leave it. I can come back later and adjust some more little highlights and stuff. That's the fun part to noodle with. But right now, I mean, look at where I'm at. I have enough here in my paint over where I've really started to define what's happening up here. I'm getting some cool shapes through here. The plate's starting to pop out. So what you want to do from this point is just keep going in there, pasting your textures, painting stuff on, blending stuff. That's all part of the fun part of kit bashing. Get all of that in there and then find out where it's going too far. And then, you know, pull back on it and then find out where it's not enough and then add a little bit more detail. Okay? I gave you a bunch of reference. It's the craziest thing. Sometimes I'll look at reference and I'll just find something really goofy that I really like that ends up blending in. Helicopters and planes can be great because they have this type of plating structure right here. See that? And that makes for great like gas can covers and lids and compartment openings. So watch, if I take that and I paste that in here, there, let's say I open it a little bit more. Okay, now it's a little bit different color. I can go to Control U, hue and balance, so I could change part of the color. I can subtract some of that out. That's sort of cool. I like that sort of green tint to there. Let's say if I want to go more of a yellow tint, I could get it pretty close to where that other value might be. That's actually not bad right there. I like that one quite a bit. And then I can go to color balance. So if I want to put more yellow in, see, I can put a little bit more yellow in there. I can go to the highlights. You can modify everything and just keep having more and more fun with it. Okay, so let me transform that. Let's bring it down. I'm just sort of curious. I was wondering if that was over the front there. How would that look? Or maybe if it's down there. Just see where it goes. I mean, here, let's just squash it. I might end up using it somewhere right there. I like the front sort of covering this. I think that's sort of cool in there. It's a little bright still, but I can nullify that down a little bit. Let me duplicate that. I'm just sort of curious. What would happen if I really enlarged this? Maybe that's too much. What if I bring it over here and try to get this to fit on that end right there. Let's see what happens. Try to transform it, distort it. If I grab this end, what if I bring that to there? What if I bring this down this way? What if I bring this over here? Okay. And if you can't see it, drop the opacity down a little bit, get it to blend in a little bit. And delete that off. Okay, let's turn the opacity back up. See what I have. Might not fit back there, but let me see if I can get it to work in there somehow. I don't like this line. It's going against part of the grain that I have, but I could fix that. I could paint over that. One of the problems is if I'm painting, remember I mentioned that? See, if I come over here and swab now and try to paint, it's not going to look right because I'm using the opacity on that layer, which is picking up the value underneath. That's why I'm getting that gray on there. So that's why a lot of times I like leaving the opacity, coming in, trying to paint or fix part of the perspective of what it is that I'm working on. See if I can get that to match up to the perspective that's in there. Thought I'd noodle. You know, that doesn't even look right. So let me come in and see that and go back. It's just an idea, but it isn't panning out. Let me get this over here. Let's blend this down a little bit more. Get that in there a little. Actually, I like that shadow sort of coming through here around like that. Okay, let's say I have that there. Now let's try, just curious, what, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, let's see what happens if I, yeah, I didn't mean to do that, sorry. There it goes. Let's see if I put that on a layer diffusion of some kind and see what happens. Soft light. It's cool, sort of blends it in. See how it makes it look like metal planing with an edge or something in there? That's not bad. But if I put it on a hard light right now, how will that, nope, whoa. Way too hard. Overlay, blends in a little bit too. Makes it sort of secondary, like there's a little bit of detail back there. I don't mind that whatsoever. I might just do soft light like that. That's cool. Let me erase the overhang little part here. Okay. And then I could come back in here. Let's commit everything, right? That's way too bright. I'll work on that guy a little bit later. So right now I'm just going to take this one, merge these two together, and there it is. Okay, so keep working from this point, keep developing it. What we'll do is I'll develop this guy a little bit more, and then we'll come back and then we'll start talking about, you know, putting some nice highlights, getting the light, reflective light, little details. Maybe this thing, you know, walk through a field of cattle and there's blood on the end of the toes. I don't know. We could put little scuff marks. Maybe it's been shot a couple times. Maybe there's some hoses broken apart. Maybe there's a glass structure that's cracked in the front. It's been gone through battle. But this will give you a rough idea. We're right at an hour right now of how to proceed forward on top of your tone study to start pulling out some details. Okay? So have fun, and see you in the next demo.